In the blistering heat of a West Texas summer, where the sun beat down like an unforgiving hammer on parched earth, old Hank Dawson stepped out of his battered pickup truck and stared at the sprawling mess before him. The ranch gates creaked ominously in the wind, half hanging off their hinges, and beyond them lay acres of overgrown weeds choking what used to be fertile pasture. Fences sagged like weary soldiers after a long battle, and the barn in the distance looked like it might collapse with the next gust. Hank, a weathered man in his late 50s with calloused hands and a heart scarred by loss, had sunk every last dime into this place. "Spread it open, do it with force," he muttered to himself, echoing the words his late father had drilled into him as a boy, words about tackling life's toughest challenges head-on, no matter the odds. Little did Hank know, this rundown ranch wasn't just land, it was a canvas for redemption, where the force he'd wield would come not from his muscles, but from the quiet strength of his soul. Hank had always been a dreamer, the kind of man who saw potential where others saw ruin. Born and raised in a small town outside Amarillo, he'd spent his youth wrangling cattle on his family's modest spread until a drought wiped them out, forcing him into factory work for decades. The grind had worn him down, divorce, estranged kids, and the recent death of his wife to cancer had left him hollow. But when he stumbled upon the ad for this foreclosed ranch online, something stirred. It was cheap, sure, but it screamed opportunity. The rancher buys a ranch. Then he gets to, the quirky listing title read, cut off mid-sentence as if daring the buyer to finish the story. Hank took the bait, packing up his life and driving cross-country to claim it. As he unloaded his tools that first day, neighbors drove by slowly, shaking their heads. "That place is cursed," one grizzled farmer yelled from his window. "Last owner went bankrupt trying to tame it." Hank waved them off, rolling up his sleeves. He was determined to spread open this land's secrets, forcing new life into it with sheer will. The early days were brutal. Hank rose before dawn, hacking away at thorny brush that tore at his skin like angry claws. The soil was depleted, the well nearly dry, and the few remaining livestock, a handful of scrawny cows, looked at him with skeptical eyes. He fixed fences until his back screamed, only to find them trampled by wild mustangs overnight. Money was tight, his savings dwindled on feed and repairs. But amid the sweat and solitude, Hank found unexpected company in Maria, a young migrant worker from across the border who showed up one morning looking for odd jobs. She was in her 20s, with a fierce determination in her eyes and a toddler son, Miguel, clinging to her leg. "I can help," she said in broken English. "Strong arms, senor." Hank hesitated. Hiring help wasn't in the budget, but something in her gaze reminded him of his own daughter, long lost to city lights. He nodded, offering her a fair wage from his meager funds. Together, they toiled, spreading open the earth with plows and force-feeding it nutrients from compost heaps they built by hand. As weeks turned to months, the ranch began to whisper signs of revival. Green shoots pierced the dirt, and the cows fattened on fresh hay. But Hank's real transformation came from the people the land drew in. Word spread in the nearby town about the stubborn newcomer breathing life into the cursed property. One evening, as Hank sat on his porch nursing a bruised hand, a beat-up van pulled up. Out spilled the Ramirez family, parents and 3 kids, evicted from their home after the father lost his job at the oil fields. They weren't asking for handouts. Mr. Ramirez offered to trade labor for a spot to park their van. "We can fix that barn roof," he said. Hank's instinct was to say no, resources were scarce, but then he thought of his father's words. "Spread it open, do it with force." Not the force of rejection, but of opening his heart. He agreed, and soon the ranch buzzed with activity. The Ramirez's patched leaks, the kids helped tend a small vegetable garden Maria started, and laughter echoed where silence had reigned. Yet, not all was smooth. An unexpected turn came during a fierce thunderstorm that ravaged the area. Lightning cracked the sky, and floodwaters surged, washing out the newly mended fences and drowning the budding crops. Hank surveyed the damage at dawn, his spirit cracking like the parched ground. "Why fight?" he grumbled, kicking a muddy boot against a post. Maria found him there, soaked and defeated. "Señor Hank," she said softly, "my abuela always said, the land doesn't break you, it bends you to grow stronger." Her words hit like a revelation. Hank realized he'd been forcing the ranch to bend to his will, but perhaps it was teaching him to bend too. That night, around a campfire with the Ramirezes, stories flowed. Mr. Ramirez shared his dreams of starting a mechanic shop. Maria confessed her fear of deportation, working tirelessly to give Miguel a better life. Hank opened up about his losses, tears mixing with rain on his face. In that vulnerability, bonds formed, unbreakable as the roots taking hold in the soil. The profound realization deepened when Hank discovered a hidden well on the property, buried under decades of neglect. Digging it out required force, literal and metaphorical, as the group worked tirelessly, spreading open the earth to reveal crystal-clear water. But the true twist came from an old journal found in the barn's attic, belonging to the previous owner. It chronicled years of isolation, how the man had pushed everyone away in his obsession with profit, leading to his downfall. "Greed closes doors," the final entry read. Hank felt a chill, he'd nearly walked the same path. Inspired, he shifted gears. Instead of hoarding the ranch's revival for himself, he invited the community in. He organized a Ranch Revival Day, where locals could volunteer, share meals, and learn sustainable farming. Skeptics came at first, but soon dozens arrived, farmers with extra seeds, kids from the school planting trees, even the grizzled neighbor who once mocked him, bringing tools and apologies. The emotional climax built as winter approached. Miguel, Maria's son, fell ill with a high fever, and the nearest hospital was hours away in the snow-dusted roads. Hank didn't hesitate. He loaded the boy into his truck, driving through the night while Maria prayed beside him. At the ER, doctors said it was pneumonia, caught just in time. As Hank paid the bill from his last savings, emptying his pockets for a family not his own, he felt a surge of purpose. Back at the ranch, the community rallied. The Ramirezes fixed Hank's truck as thanks, neighbors donated supplies to rebuild what the storm destroyed. In that act of selfless generosity, Hank giving without expectation, the ranch transformed. Crops flourished, livestock thrived, and people who were once strangers became family. Maria's papers came through with community support, and Mr. Ramirez started his shop in the refurbished barn. Years later, as Hank stood on that same porch, now surrounded by blooming wildflowers and the chatter of grandchildren, his own kids had returned, drawn by tales of the miracle ranch, he reflected on the journey. The title of his life story, once incomplete, now made sense: The Rancher Buys a Ranch. Then he gets to spread kindness wide open, with the force of 1,000 hearts. It wasn't about conquering land, it was about opening oneself to others, forcing through barriers of fear and isolation with compassion. In a world often divided, Hank's ranch became a beacon, proving that selflessness plants seeds that grow into legacies. Readers across America, from bustling cities to quiet farms, found resonance in his tale, a reminder that true power lies in lifting others, leaving hearts fuller and hopes brighter. For in spreading open our lives with forceful generosity, we don't just survive, we truly live.